You know what you should do? You should follow me on Twitter at Brommer018. Link in the description. Do it now. Hello guys, thank you for joining me in another instalment of our FIFA 21 Tactics series. If you're new here, this is the series where I show you how to recreate and also adapt real systems so that they'll actually work in-game. We've covered many different tactics throughout the course of, well, the series is live really, so if you are new here, do be sure to go and check them out after this. But today, we are switching our focus on to Zinedine Zidane's most recent Real Madrid tactics, in particular the 4-3-3. Now, they've rotated between different systems and formations, I guess, throughout the course of the season. They've occasionally used a three-back, they've used a diamond in midfield sometimes. They've really rotated, but generally the one they always come back to, and the one that he used when he was originally there in his first stint at the club, has been the 4-3-3. Now, we covered the original 4-3-3 from when he was first there last year on FIFA 20. However, obviously that was 3 years ago and more. And since then, a lot of things changed. There have been some personnel changes, particularly at the top end of the pitch. Obviously, missing one Cristiano Ronaldo, no Gareth Bale there as well. So there's a lot of changes, and it's a vastly different approach to what it was some years ago. So this is one we can dive into today, as I had a few requests from you guys, so hopefully you do enjoy it. What we'll do is, first of all, I'll show you any position changes on the squad screen, and then we'll go into the tactics and I'll show you all the tactics, explaining why they do it and how it works, and then we'll finish off with the player instructions as well, going through each individual role. And on the side, when we do get onto the player instructions, I will suggest you suitable players to sign as well. Just in case you're playing career mode. So we're ready to get into it. A quick note on the tactic itself. It's okay, you know. It's fine. It does the job. You know, not one that I'll really be going back to be honest, I have to say, because I think that it lacks certain things. But I think it's one that maybe you guys will find differently. You know, maybe you'll enjoy. So, you know, as always, do let me know in the comment section down below. On that note, we are going to get into it. So first off, we have the positions, and as you can see, there's a couple of different changes here. We've gone for the 4-3-3 holding. However, first off, the fullbacks have actually been changed to wing-back positions on both sides, and it's something that we do often in these videos depending on the tactic. What it does is it just means that they'll get further wider and further forward, because when they play in right back and left back, it's not quite as bad this year. It can still be done, but particularly when you're in attacking formations like this that look to control possession, you know, you really just want to get them as wide as possible, and, you know, as further forward as possible as well, to really complement that overlap that we will talk about. So we'll move then to wing back, and also we have Luka Modric here, and he does move to the central attacking midfield position. So obviously it's naturally a 4-3-3, but with Toni Kroos here, you got someone who's more of a deep playmaker, and with Modric, you've got someone who likes to get into those advanced areas a lot more, you know, find those pockets of space, and as a result, with Kroos, you can have him as the flat central midfielder, and he'll play that sort of deep line playmaker role. But with Modric, to get him into those advanced positions, you'll find it much easier to do so in the central attacking midfield position. So that's one that does work out for him. He did really work out in this system. So that's it for the players and the roles. And now we can talk about the tactics. So we've got press after possession loss, first of all, in the defensive side of things. Now, obviously, they generally look to counter-press their teams. They're not an extreme gegenpressing side, and it's something that really Zidane has done throughout his entire career, throughout both stints at Real Madrid. So this is something that, you know, ultimately you shouldn't have them to be doing too much, because they're looking to control possession so much, and they should have so much possession. You'll notice in the gameplay on the right hand side wasn't the case for me, because the AI decided to just get it into the corner and just start messing about with it and not doing anything. So they're holding on to the ball for ages. So the stats would show that we didn't have much possession, but if you take that away, it's obviously a different story. So yeah, generally, obviously, they're looking to control possession, so they shouldn't be having to press too much. But when they do need to, it will generally be after immediately losing the ball. Occasionally, you can use the D-pad to activate a team press, in which case, in fact, I think we did do that for the first goal. So yeah, that can work out very well as well, but obviously you have to pick your specific moments with that. Defensively, in terms of the width, we have this on 3, and this is usually the case for the majority of systems, particularly the ones that have a 4-back. You don't want teams playing through you. Very, very easy to concede goals that way. You want to try and force them wide, because as you've seen in the gameplay, when they get into wide areas, they don't do anything with it. So that just works out in your favour particularly. So you can force them out wide and you'll make your life much easier defensively. With depth, we have this on 8. Because it's not a gegenpressing system, we don't really need to complement that with as high a defensive line as possible. We drop this off a little bit, because then they'll drop off a couple of yards or so, and it just makes it a little bit easier on you defending wise, because you're slightly less vulnerable to balls over the top and balls in behind. And with the pacey centre backs that these guys have anyway, and pacey defenders in general, you should be okay. So yeah, that works out very, very nicely. Moving on to the offensive style of the ball now, we have this on 1. So very, very drastic. We're getting players as close to each other as possible to really try and emphasise that close passing possession style system. What you have to remember is that in the central midfield areas, you've not got a lot of mobility in the central midfield areas. So with Modric and Kroos, you want them as close to each other as possible to really, and the other players around them, really supporting them as close range as possible, because you don't want them to having to move too much. You don't want them to be having to run too much to find space. They really try and take advantage of the little pockets of space that will form in the central areas. You don't want them too far apart. With players in the box, this is on 5, which will mean roughly 2 to 3 players. So that's another thing. They get the ball out wide quite a lot, but there's less of an emphasis on crossing the ball as much as there is, let's say, for example, working it into the box from the wide positions. So an example for anyone who watched them in the Champions League, if I can have a think back here, they played, I think it was a Liverpool game in the quarter-final at home. The ball's out wide, and then they play it inside, and it comes to Modric, and all of a sudden he's able to turn his man, and they score from it. And that's really what we're looking at here. They try and get the ball out wide to really stretch the opposition, but then try and work it in. They will occasionally cross, of course. You've got Karim Benzema in the middle, and that's why he'll be getting into those positions as much as possible, who is very good in those situations and has scored quite a few goals from that this season. But generally, you don't want too many players into the box, particularly when you've got the likes of Toni Kroos and etc. and Asensio, who really like to do their work in short range on the ball situations. With corners and free kicks, we always move these up to 4. No need to try and personalise these other teams, because these are generally the sort of unwritten rules that you'll follow in set pieces. It will mean 2 men back, 1 on the edge of the box or 2 on the edge of the box, but you get an extra man or 2 in the box, so you can have more threat from those corner situations, which can be very, very helpful. Now, that rounds it off for the tactics. We can move on to the player instructions, and as I mentioned, for those of you who are new here, we will suggest suitable players for you to sign that can fill that role very, very well based on their attributes. So first off, Thibaut Courtois, sweeper keeper, and comes to crosses. Slightly less mobile than other keepers, and that's why I'll suggest sweeper keepers in the suitable player section who've got a bit more mobility. But nevertheless, a very good keeper, and in particular with comes to crosses, because he's so tall, so commanding, that's something that can really, really work in your favour. So definitely something worth bearing in mind in that situation. With the 2 centre-backs, we don't need to change anything here. Their instructions are perfectly fine. As we've already alluded to, they're very fast centre-backs here. Ramos is the slowest of the main sort of guard, and he's 71 pace, so that in itself is very impressive for a 34-year-old. You've got Varane, who's got 82 pace, and we look down here, Militao's at 81 pace, Nacho Fernandez 78 pace. So you've got some very, very fast centre backs here, and that's something that you do have to bear in mind. And that's one thing that I did actually really enjoy about this team, is that they do have that sort of physical upside, particularly in the defensive areas. Moving on to the fullbacks next, as we alluded to earlier, overlap and join the attack as well. What I did notice about these guys is that because obviously they're the ones creating the majority of the width, as is the case in a lot of systems, they were very, very good at sort of exploiting that space, a lot of space, and exploiting those areas. And part of that is the fact that they do have high work rates, so you should also bear that in mind as well, as we have done in the suitable player section. You're always looking, particularly in these systems, for fullbacks who do have high work rate, because it's very important that ultimately, whilst they were doing very good stuff in the attacking phase of the game and exploiting that space, also they'll track back and work back when they need to as well. Onto the midfield next. First of all, we have Casemiro. Now this is a very tricky one really to sort of talk about, because he's the holding midfielder, and he's can be the pivot at times, but generally he's a defensive minded midfielder. Now we've got him on stay back while attacking and cut passing lanes, but the situation here is that sometimes Casemiro can come forward, and that's why he has scored a few goals. I think it might be about 6 goals this season when I was researching. I think it might be 6 goals this season, which is, for a defensive midfielder, is a lot. And part of that is because occasionally, he will get forward, but obviously you can't recreate it where Modric will drop in when Casemiro goes forward. You've got to set one or the other. So really, we just keep him as that stable sort of stay back, defensive minded midfielder, and you can just sort of keep Modric in his instructions as well. So there's no way for us to really work around that. So like I say, keep him as the holding midfielder there. One thing I should mention that I forgot to mention earlier on in the video, in the gameplay on the right hand side, I don't know what point we'll be at during post editing, obviously, but there was a time when I looked to play it out from a goal kick, looked to just tap it to the man in my box. For some reason, it goes like 30-20 yards up the pitch straight to a Barcelona player, and they score from it. I went to go on the replay to show you guys, just sort of emphasise it, how I wanted it to go to the player. I pressed back thinking it would bring the menu up, and then obviously replayed, and it got rid of the goal. So I do apologise for that. That honestly wasn't intentional, but I don't know what point we'll be at in the game, so do just bear that one in mind. Switching back to the player roles now. Next up, we've got Toni Kroos, and as I said, he will be the deep line playmaker, so that's how we try and recreate his role in this game through the instructions. We've got stay back while attacking, and we've got stay on the edge of the box. Very, very rarely do you want him getting into those situations, if not for anything else, and because he's very slow on this game, and so when he does get into the box, there's no way he's tracking back anytime soon. 50 pace. So that's going to be a bit of a hindrance. Generally, he does sort of play that role as well. You might get some anomalies occasionally where there's a few players in the box and stuff, but like we say, we're trying to stick to what they generally try and do here. Elsewhere, stick to position, cover wing. Not much more needs to be said there. Moving on to Luka Modric next, and this is the role that really I probably enjoyed the most, because we spoke about it in previous videos. The free roam role, this one that's just so enjoyable to play because they just take up so much space. They'll get into pockets all over the pitch. You'll find them all over the place, and it's really, really enjoyable to play with. So first off, come back on defence, fairly self-explanatory, and then support on crosses. You'll see we've got stay on the edge of the box for crosses here, but obviously in the tactics we do have this on 5, so it's 2 to 3. So he will occasionally get in there because on the tactics it will sometimes conflict with that and it will override it, but generally you'll find him staying on the edge of the box. It's really the sort of main men, Benzema, Vinicius Jr, etc, that you're really looking to get into the box. What you want the most, and what we're talking about with the free roam here, is for him to take up as much positions in those advanced areas and pockets of space as much as he possibly can. And so this is the most effective way to do it. And you'll find in a lot of our attacks, he's just always involved. He's always involved. So fun to play with this instruction. Just really enjoy it. And with Luka Modric as well, who's obviously very talented and really good on this game, just technically gifted, and even at, what is he, 35 years old, still got 91 agility. So that in itself, pretty impressive and very fun to play with. Right, we can move on to the front three next. So we've got a couple of different roles here. I think we'll start off with Vinicius Jr. So we got him come back on defence, of course, and then with chance creation, we've got him on cut inside. So we've kept alluding to how the wingers will generally create the width, and so that gives license for these attacking. Sorry, I said the wing backs will create the width, the fullbacks will create the width, and that gives license to the wingers to then come into more central areas, which is very handy. And we can couple that with getting behind. He'll angle his runs so as to create that level of penetration, that avenue of trying to run in behind and play balls in behind. That's how they can really take an active role in the game. So yeah, you want to utilise his pace and his movement as much as you possibly can, and this is the best way to do that. Support on crosses, get into the box, as we've already spoke about. It's generally him and Benzema who are in those situations mostly. Moving on to the right now. So obviously, as you can see, we've got Asensio here. Now, at the time of recording this, he's the one who's generally been playing there because more often than not, Eden Hazard has been injured. Now, so I went with Asensio for the tactic, for the instructions, for the start of the game, and that was because of that. So, you know, to try and replicate the fact that he's been generally playing. However, what you'll have noticed is I take him off, I think it was at half time, bring Eden Hazard on, and all of a sudden the game completely changes. With so much more of a threat going forward. We're getting him on the ball a whole lot more because he's just generally a better player. He's more suited to the system. He's just fun to play with. He's just generally better. So I didn't really enjoy playing with Asensio, but when we brought Hazard on, it was far better. Now, as you can see, the instructions are slightly different, but he can still fit into those instructions very well. So we've got come back on defence and we've got cut inside, but this time instead of getting behind, we've got come short, because obviously Asensio likes to do his work you know, on the ball more and collect the ball more, because he hasn't got that pace to really run in behind. And part of that is why they do try and like to work the ball into the box more, and, you know, play with more narrow angles and narrow little short passes, etc. With the support and crosses, we've got this unbalanced again because we've got 2 to 3 players, but sometimes you know, not all of them will be in there, as we sort of mentioned. So that is really where we're going to try and get that balanced look as much as we possibly can. Finally, we have Karim Benzema. And of course he's the main outlet here. We've got him on stay central. You just want him in those positions as much as possible. He's a poacher, you know, he's a poacher. That's what he does. And so to do that, we've got him on stay central and we've got him on getting behind as well, because that's how you get your forward into those poaching positions as much as you possibly can, really. We've also got him to stay forward as well, because you want him to be that out ball going forward, and he should never be having to track back too much at all, particularly in his old age. Just have a look what his stamina is here. I never really know. He's only 78, so that's fine anyway, but yeah, generally you just don't need him tracking back anyway. So yeah, that really rounds it off. Then, guys, I think not too much more to say about this system. Like I say, I didn't overly enjoy it, but you guys might find it different, really. You know, there's other systems that are slightly more active, slightly more penetrating. So we'll see how it goes. You know, let me know what you think of the tactic. If you've got any questions about the system whatsoever, then please do get at me in the comment section, and I'll do my best to get back to you. For those who haven't, please go and check out my second channel, Brommer Ball. We've got a lot of good content coming out there. We recently got some videos reacting to the European Super League, to Jose Mourinho sacking. There's a lot of good stuff there, and a lot more stuff coming out in the future. We've got a lot of stuff planned, particularly some tactical previews and stuff, so keep an eye out for that, and go and subscribe as well if you haven't. Subscribe to this channel as well, and ring the bell for notifications for every time I upload. Be sure to leave a like on the video if you've enjoyed it, and give me a follow on Twitter as well. The link for that is in the description. And I know we are going to finish it there. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I will see you soon.